Hi, everyone. So grateful you could be with us this evening. This is Radiance from Lighthouse Effects, and I'm here with Joe Cairney from Comedy of Errors, and really excited to have you on this evening, Joe. I just wanted to drop a couple of really quick notes. First of all, you can find me at lighthouseeffects.com, AFFECTS, and I'm a consultant for those in the music industry and small businesses. So I help bring in empathy so that you can grow with greater customer care. Book me at lighthouseeffects.com. A big shout out to Spirituality Gone Wild and Love Coach Academy for having us on. And without further ado, Mr. Joe Cairney, so excited to be here with you.
Good evening, and very nice to be with you in the United States of America.
Yes.
Thanks.
Grateful, yes. So I have a whole bunch of questions for you, but I would really, my first biggest piece that I like dropping in with musicians around is what brought you, emotionally, what brought you to want to front a band?
Back in the very late 70s, early 80s, I played with a band. My brother was in it, and the guitarist that's in Comedy of Errors was in it, and the drummer, the original drummer from the very early 80s, was in the band. And we did covers of Thin Lizzy, Wishbone Ash, the Beatles, Rolling Stones, just like most bands you'll still find them all over the world. The drummer at the time was playing with a keyboard player and a guitarist and a bass player who was his friend. And they asked if I wanted to join the band. So they sent me a tape with, I think, 2 or 3 tracks and asked me to listen. I really liked the stuff. So I went along for a rehearsal, and it basically took from there. So that was about 1984. And we rehearsed till we had a set about maybe an hour and a half long. And we started playing gigs around about Glasgow area first. It was kind of local. Then we spread out to the UK, played down in England a tour, and we managed to get across to Holland in 1986, I think it was. So things really took off from there, and I'd done that from 84 till 89, and I left when I joined the fire service, because I had to leave to go away for 16 weeks training, and it wasn't fair to ask the band to wait for me. So they got another singer. They lasted about a year, and then they just disbanded. And that was the original Comedy of Errors. Finished about 1990.
Okay. And then how did you shift your life, and how did you balance both of those and then bring it back together?
I had a friend that played keyboards with another Scottish band called Abel Gans. Abel Gans were good friends of ours, and we'd done quite a few gigs together. So what happened was Abel Gans were playing a gig in Glasgow. They didn't have a singer. So they asked me to step in for a one-off gig in Glasgow, which is a great place called King Tut's Wawa Hut, right? It's where the band, do you know the band Oasis?
Uh-huh.
Right, that's where Oasis that's where they got found, was in Glasgow, this King Tut's Wawa Hut. It's a really, really cool venue. So they were playing a gig supporting a band from Aberdeen called Palace, who we done gigs with way back. Done the gig with them, and Hugh had written an album for a different project. He was fed up playing with Abel Gans. So he asked me, would I like to have a listen to the music he'd written? And if I liked it, would I do the lyrics? So I had to listen to it. I really liked it. So we started work on it. The band is called Grand Tour. So we did the band, the album Grand Tour. We started recording it. But then Jim, who was the original keyboard player on Comedy of Errors, contacted me out the blue. We met up at a gig in Glasgow, and he said, I'd like to go back into the studio and maybe re-record some of the stuff we did back in the 80s. We had a vinyl album out, and he says, would you be willing to do it? So he sent me some of the stuff, the older stuff, and a lot of new stuff. Again, I listened to it and I went, I really like this. So Jim had a studio. So I started going down to his. That then put Hugh's project Grand Tour on the back burner. Although we still went down and recorded bits and pieces. I spent from 2009 to 2011 doing the Disobey album. It was released May 2011. So we got back into re-recording Grand Tour stuff. And Comedy of Error's second album, Fanfare and Fantasy, was being written with some of the older songs and some new songs. So again, Grand Tour get put on the back burner once again. We recorded Fanfare and Fantasy. So I said to Jim and the guys in Comedy of Errors, right, I'm not doing another Comedy of Errors album until I finish the Grand Tour album, which we did. Thankfully, it came out, and then we had the third Comedy of Errors album, which is called Spirit, and in between that and the last album, which is I can't think of the name will come to me in a minute. We recorded another Grand Tour album. The first one was called Heavy on the Beach, which basically was about nuclear war. It was based on a film. It was about a submarine that had been out at sea. It comes back in, and the world has been destroyed, but it doesn't know anything about it. A really good. I think it wasn't Charlton Heston. The name. I can't remember the name at the moment of the film, but it was a really, really famous film, black and white film. I think it was called On the Beach, if I remember right. So that was what the album was about. Basically, the bombers getting up, dropping the bombs like Hiroshima, etc. Because that started off, obviously, that finished the Second World War. So we wrote an album about what happened in 1963, the Bay of Pigs, where the Russians and the Americans nearly started World War III. So the album was about what would have happened if things. So then we got a second album which came out last year, which was called Clocks That Tick But Never Talk. And it was another concept album based on a guy who he's obviously like a conspiracy theorist. He thinks that everybody's listening to him, the walls, everything, the clocks are listening to him. So so that's the second album by Grand Tour. But we've never played live. We're basically a studio band. And then we've done the fourth Comedy of Errors album, which is it's just nearly 3 years ago, which is 2017 it came out. And we normally do an album every 2 years, but we really get put back. And then with obviously the coronavirus, COVID shut everything down. So the album's written, the next album's written. We don't have a name for it. All the songs are there. The lyrics are all there. We just need to get the next Comedy of Errors album in the studio, and hopefully we can start recording. And hopefully I'm going down in 2 weeks' time to start the vocals. The drums have nearly done. The keyboards are finished, and some of the bass is done. So it's just vocals, and then we need to get the guy from Southampton. He mixes the albums. It's a guy called Rob Aubrey who works with Big Train. He works with. He used to work with guys in Asia and Yes, so he's really, really well known, and he's done every single one of our albums so far. That's the plan. Is the fifth album, Comedy of Errors. Although it's the fifth one, it's the fifth one of the new version of Comedy of Errors, because we obviously the album's back in the 1980s. Can't get them anymore. They're sold out, unfortunately.
The old record shops.
The old record shops, you'll see them on eBay for ridiculous prices.
Right.
We only had, I think we had a limited run of 1,000 copies, and we basically sold them. But there was no internet back in 1986, 87. Never had mobile phones, so it was basically word of mouth. So when you'd done gigs down in England or over in Holland, you're relying on people through fanzines and just word of mouth that people will turn up to your gigs. So we were kind of fortunate. It'd be nice if we could step back. I say to people now, if I could step back 35, 40 years and have the technology that we've got now back then there was a good possibility that we might have done a wee bit. Things have changed now. You don't get record contracts anymore. Their days are gone, basically. Everything's done on the internet. You can sell all your stuff on the internet, and you get guys like George, people that write 3-chord music, but they can sell out stadiums, and good luck to them. If people like that's up to them. But we like what we do, and if people like it, then we're quite happy.
Have you had, that was beautiful. Thank you for, the lineage and the storyline there.
Thank you.
Can you tell me more about, have you had experiences directly with like your community, your fan base, where they come to you and they share stories about their lives that have helped has any of that helped to influence what you're creating or the way that you're generating your music?
To be honest, when the band had split up, when I had left the band to join the fire service in 1989, I think I went to see them twice with the new singer, and they kind of moved away from the style of music that we do just now. Excuse me, sorry. That's actually, believe it or not, that's the keyboard player. It's phoning me, so I'll contact him later. Apologies for that. That's my phone ringing. So I was going back. I'll try to think what we're saying there now. So go back to the 80s. Some of the stuff that we did, the stuff that we'd like to do now, it's kind of moved on. Although we've got a lot of songs that we played back in the 80s, we're trying to move forward. Like most bands, when they call it progressive music, so there's not one of our albums sounds the same. Now, if I say something just now, does the whole of this go out, or can you maybe cut a little section out? If I tell you something, does it all go through? Right. It's basically about part of the album. Right, was the Spirit album was based on somebody very close to some in the band, right? A very close family member. When we were recording the first album, we used to go down. I had to go down to Jim's house, and I'd record the vocals. And at that time, we started, I think, 2009, and his daughter would be running up down the stairs with her pals, etc. And we don't tell a lot of people this actually, because we've kind of kept it quiet. Some people know, but most don't. And what happened was his daughter started limping, took her to hospital. Cut a long story short, she ended up with a thing called Ewing sarcoma, which is a very, very aggressive form of bone cancer in children. So she was aged, she was be 14. She was ages with my son at the time. And this was in the October, she found out, October 2010. And she died age 15 in February to the next year, 5 months later. She was only 15. So the Spirit album is basically about being born, going through life, dying, but then being reborn again. So it basically is. And I've got friends in the fire service. One of my friends his son died of cancer age 22. And he bought the album, and he sat and messaged me, and he said he was sitting crying while he was listening to it because the words really got to him, and he said it was such a special album. And then I had a guy who was he's a minister. This guy is a big fan of the band. He loved the first 2 albums. He actually private messaged me, Joe, can you contact me? Gave me his phone number. I spoke to him on the phone. And he said to me, when I first started listening to the first lines of the album, like the first verse, it's one long track. It's 44 minutes long, the track. But it's kind of split into different sections. So the first part's basically it's about you raging at God for taking someone away. And he said to me, he said, I listened to it, Joe, and I said I was really angry with the band. He says, until I listened to the rest of the album. And then I was reading the lyrics, and he said, and then I thought, that's such a beautiful way. But it was written basically for the girl that I said that died, and it's an absolute shame. It's probably the saddest funeral I've been at. It was really, really terrible. So that had a massive, massive influence on the writing. The next album we did, the last album we did as well, was basically an album that had bits to do with life and death, and again, it didn't focus on the daughter, but it still was about people. I says, when you're born, I says, you just don't know what's going to happen, what's coming around the corner, and everybody goes through that. I mean, especially these days, the past 4 or 5 months, with things that's happening worldwide, which is absolutely shocking. But life has totally changed. In the USA, the UK, Europe, the deaths are absolutely horrendous. People are dying with this. And also the people are losing jobs right, left and centre because the places are shutting down. They can't afford to stay open. So the last album was called House of the Mind. And again, it was to do with people thinking basically about, the first track's called Tachyon. And people used to ask me, what's Tachyon? Tachyon's just something that's, it's a scientific thing. And I had to look it up. Jim had to tell me it's to do with something that's faster than the speed of light. So I never knew what it was, because I asked Jim when he wrote it, what's tachyon? It's a thing, a particle that's faster than the speed of light. So
wow. And you think about, like right now, there are, for me personally, music is the opportunity that I've always had in order to, it's the thing that reaches me at 3 a.m. when there's no one else to speak with. And oftentimes people don't have access to be able to go out to get the counseling service, or they don't feel empowered to go get that. And so oftentimes the channel that they're hearing is your voice. Your voice is coming through, just like the minister that you talked about.
Yeah.
And the lyrics that help to distribute that movement away from isolation for one moment.
Yeah.
So this idea that Comedy of Errors has a platform in order to reach people and tell them, listen, you're not alone. And I would really love to, that really touched me, the idea of that you would take time and enter a frequency and a vibration. And then that's going to be out in space forever for all of those who have lost somebody who's precious to them, or who are in a really challenging time.
It's out of the albums we've written, Jim kind of writes the music, and he does the lyrics. With the other band, Grand Tour, I get to write the lyrics along with Hugh. But the album is, I said, it's a hard listen. It is really hard, because it's one track, 44 minutes long. And there is a theme throughout the album where there's a musical passage keeps coming back. It's changed slightly. It's not the same all the way through, but I said that it has got a theme, and each part of the theme links into the next theme. Basically up till the last kind of lines in there's a track at the end. We done an edited single version of it, but right up until the end of the main album, the last line is basically when somebody's going up to heaven and they're looking at through the pink lights, and it's basically when somebody's rising up to heaven. And that was Jim thinking about his daughter, because he's sitting thinking, this is how the album ends. You don't die at the end. There's somewhere that you go. Maybe it doesn't matter what religion you are. If you just believe that at the end of it, you're not finished. You're either going to a better place. So if you believe in Allah, if you believe in Jesus, if you believe in Buddha, whatever you believe in, as long as you've got a belief, to me that's a fantastic thing. If you don't believe as well, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that if you've got a belief, I think it gives you something to kind of hold on to. I mean, I say my prayers every night. I still say my prayers, and I always look to thank I kind of fell out with my family, but there's one of my brothers I speak to, but I still say my prayers. I ask my guardian angel to look after my son. I like to look after my granddaughter, who's just turned 2, and obviously my wee grandson who was born yesterday. So and my son's partner, and plus my old aunties, my aunties that were in America, the family that I never fell out with. I ask God every night to look after them, my guardian angel to look after them. People might think that's a silly thing, but I don't go to church anymore. I used to go to church when I was younger, chapel. It was basically chapel. I was brought up a Catholic, but I don't go anymore. But why you need to go into a chapel or a church or a mosque to pray, I don't see. If you can sit and think you can help someone by just maybe saying a wee prayer. You'll see it all the time on Facebook. My sister's just had a heart attack. My father's just collapsed. You say a wee prayer, and I'll put a wee message to thinking of you. You don't know the person, but it's nice that they think that somebody's maybe thinking of them and maybe say a prayer for them. And sometimes prayers work.
Right.
If you believe in it, yeah, I think so.
Yeah, especially I'd like to read a lot about quantum theory and quantum physics.
Right.
And parts of that, two pieces that you're just mentioning. First part is gratitude, like putting out the belief that thank you for watching over and being in that frequency. And then the second one is when we have the opportunity, like I think that we landed here and it feels like kindergarten.
Yeah.
It's humanity 101. Like if you can get past humanity 101,
right.
And then you can move into like whatever the next grand adventure is. But that's what it reminds me of, is landing on Earth reminds me of humanity 101. Like, yeah.
There is that aspect of it. As I said, you're only here for a very, very short time. I mean, I sit and don't think the age I am just now, and I don't think I feel as if I'm still 20, 30 years younger. Still work away full time. When I left the fire service, I can't sit in the house. I need to work. So I went out and got myself a job. I work at the airport. And going back to one of the things you said, it was literally when my phone rang, it put me off, and it's just come into my head. You asked about fan base, and if you asked about how we can keep in contact with fan base. When I left the band and joined the fire service, the internet had just started up, and somebody contacted us out the blue. I can't remember how, why it happened. And they asked us, could we meet in with them in Glasgow, in a bar in Glasgow. And this was just fans saying, so we done that once or twice a year. It would be maybe the 90s, sometime in the 90s. We met these people and they would turn up, just fans, basically just fans. They would come up, take photographs. They'd ask if we had anything we could give them, just things that we had from back in the early 80s. So we got to meet people then, and then it kind of faded away a bit until Jim contacted me and asked me if I wanted to do the Disobey album. We also have a guy that does our stuff. He's put them out in vinyl. So the Disobey album is going to be coming out on the 2nd of October. It'll be a limited edition. And it's a double album. The same as the Fanfare and Fantasy was a double album, because it's too long to go into a single vinyl.
Right.
So this one, Disobey, is too big to go into a single vinyl, but it wasn't enough to go into a double vinyl. So when we were in the United States, when we played Rozfest, we recorded that concert. So we picked 3 tracks and then we remixed it. So the guy down at Southampton, Rob Aubrey, who mixes and masters, he remastered the original album and remixed the 3 live tracks. So that will come out in October. That'll be a limited edition. So it keeps the interest up, because we haven't been able to get this new album done, basically because of the world situation. Everybody's exactly the same. even if you had a studio, you weren't allowed to go. You couldn't go to somebody's studio in the UK. I'm not sure what it was like. It's like in the USA, whether you could visit friends, but in the UK they locked it down. They stopped you. You can't go and visit your parents. So you basically you couldn't visit anyone. I was lucky enough. I walked right through it in the airport because we still had flights. We've got wee small islands just outside Scotland, and people that needed to go to hospital, we had to be there to be able to help them off, etc. But it's just the things are mad just now. It's just and it's not going to get better anytime soon. It's going to take a long, long time before we're going to get back to where the world was 9 months ago, 6 months ago. It's going to take an awful long time, and it's going to take an awful lot of money as well. But hopefully we'll get by that.
Right. Regarding your, how is it that you come into character while you're singing? Like, what are when you're looking at the lyrics?
Yeah.
How is it that you're starting to create the character because I think of songs like they're their own entity, they're their own being. Yeah. And then we have to adapt in order to show up and present it in a way that has its own feelings and its own emotions.
Yeah.
So for this new album that's coming out, what are pieces within your life that you're starting to carry and emote? Because you're a really emotive singer and you're connected when you sing. What are the pieces of your life that you're pulling in to tell those stories?
When I'm on stage, I'm actually quite animated. I tend not to stand about. I tend to move about the stage. The bigger the stage, the better. I'll try and interact with the audience. In America, when there's a song we usually do is either the last song in the set, or if we think you're going to get an encore, we'll leave it. We'll do the encore. And at the end of the song, I always go into the audience and I'll sing in the audience. And if there's somebody, maybe even if I know their face, I'll go up with a mic and I'll let them sing into the mic as well. It's just something that we've done so I kind of associate myself when I'm doing it that I'm part of the audience, and I always thank the audience for coming, because there's no point if you don't have a reaction with the audience and actually integrate with them. I hate to go and see bands where they go on stage, come on, and they walk off, and then you won't get to see them. I'm not talking about big bands, your Genesis, your Pink Floyds, your Adele, anything that's a big, like U2. You won't get to see the members of the band. Our bands you will, and they're always at the end. I'll always say to them at the end of the gig, give us 10-15 minutes and we'll meet you outside, we'll sign stuff, and I'll sit and talk to anybody that comes and speaks to me. I've never ever said, sorry, I'm too busy. What I'll say sometimes is, I'll come and get you in a wee minute. I'm speaking to someone. Can you give me 5 minutes? But you try and get around as many people as you can. So when I'm singing, I'm trying to think myself, right, if I'm in the audience, what would I want the audience to see? I want the audience to see somebody that's interacting with them. They're not standing there just staring out. Sometimes you can't see them in the lights. The lights are in your eyes. You can't sometimes see the audience. So you'll see me ducking down below the lights just so as I can see them. And I'll go along the front and I'll stare at people, not just to let them know that I'm seeing their faces. And I'll put my hand out and I'll shake people's hands. I think if you can have a bond with the audience, that's the best thing you can do. I understand massive bands where when you get to become a really big band, maybe you can't do that. I would like to have thought that if we had got to be a reasonably big band, that I would still have done it. I like to think I would have. When you get to that stage, you're not allowed to, because your management will say you can't go and see them because you've not got any time. One of my biggest pet hates is bands who charge fans to come, and you pay. So, like a band, I absolutely love Toto, the band Toto. They're one of my favourite bands. I absolutely love them. Came to Glasgow, so we got the tickets. pretty decent price tickets, but they had they have a silver package, a gold package, and a platinum package, and you're sitting thinking, why would I pay $200, $300 to go up for 1 minute with them to get a photograph and say hello? And when you walk away, they're not, after 2 minutes, you forgot that person. Whereas if I speak to people at any of our gigs, I'll talk to them for 5-10 minutes, no problem. And I don't mind a couple of people coming up and talking to me. And I'll always make time for people, because if you don't, people think then, too big for your boots. Who do he think he is? And I would prefer that people thought, he's a good guy. And most people that come and see the band will always say, we're really welcome. Everybody in the band speaks to people. With being a main singer, you know yourself, Radiance, you know that people want to speak to the singer, not because they think he's the best, but because he's the guy who fronts the band. That's the person they would rather talk to. Poor drummer gets left at the back. Nobody's interested in the bass player. The lead guitarist, if he's good, maybe gets. But it's and to be honest, the guys in the band, I know it sounds that the guys in the band prefer me to do it because it takes pressure off them. The drummer's great. Bruce comes over, and Bruce enjoys chatting to people. John's the same. John loves chatting to people. Mark's a wee bit shy. Mark will tend to kind of stand back. He won't not talk to people, but he tends to get his gear together at the end of gigs, and he'll try and get away as quick as he can. Me and Sam, if we go away anywhere and we're staying overnight, me and Sam usually share a room. So the two of us, we'll sit till 4 o'clock in the morning drinking bottles of wine and beer. And when we done it when we played in America at Rosfest, we sat with, as a band from Norway, Magic Pie. Brilliant band, really good guys. We were sitting drinking, so we had all these American beers, Pabst Blue Ribbon, Michelob, and so we were sitting, and the guys from Magic Pie, the singer, came over and said, "Do you want some beers?" So we said, "No, here, have one of them." "Oh, that's not beers." So he comes in with all these really strange beers that they must have got them somewhere in America. And then he had a bottle of their local alcohol, was called Aquavit. So he's got this bottle of Aquavit, and you've got to drink it out of the bottle. You're not allowed to pour it into a glass. Drink it straight from the bottle. We sat to 4 or 5 in the morning, absolutely wrecked. It was just mad. But that's what I like. I love sitting with other bands, listening to their stories, and I love sitting listening with fans. And when we played America, we sat with the fans every night. They had an after show party, and we sat with the fans, came over, chatted to us. So you were sitting there till 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, just chatting to fans, and it was absolutely brilliant. And I think if you're a fan, to get to talk to bands that you like, if you're a fan of the band, it's a great feeling to think they've made time for me. They haven't just shrugged me away. They're not too big for their boots. And one of the nicest guys I've ever met live is Steve Hackett, who used to play guitar with Genesis. Nicest guy in the world. He'll sit. Now, he doesn't ever sit and say to you, "Oh, you need to go off speaking to somebody else." He'll cue it, and he'll sit and talk to you for 5 minutes. Give you his time. Really, probably the nicest guy I've ever met music-wise. And I've met some who they don't want you. They don't want to know you. Don't want you to be there. It's like, "Hello, right, sign that." And they're looking away as they're signing it. So I never ask them to now. I don't go to bands and ask. I'm not really interested. Done it when I was younger. I don't have to go chase after bands anymore. If I get the chance to speak to people after a gig and it's well-known musicians, yeah, I'll do it, but I don't get in my way to do it, and I certainly wouldn't pay to say. I think it's ridiculous. Ringo Starr from the Beatles, Ringo Starr hates it. He said it's the biggest rip-off you can do for fans. Fans buy your albums, your CDs, your T-shirts, pay money to go and see you in concert, and then they want you to pay to have a photograph. Nah. You can go onto Facebook, or you can go into Photoshop and kid on you met them. So
Yeah, put your arm around the photo.
that, yeah. But there's some of them. I just think they've got so big. I don't think a lot of times it's the band. I think a lot of the times it's the management. They think they can make more money. So the more money the band make, the more money the management make, and that's maybe part of it. I don't know. But there's even smaller bands in the UK charge people, and I'm sitting there going, why would you want to sit and pay an extra 30, 40 pounds to meet someone? They're not even a big band. You might be a nice band, they might be a good band, but no, I wouldn't waste my money. I'd rather buy a CD.
Right.
I'd rather sit and talk to the fans rather than that.
Yeah, I appreciate your mentioning that. You know, like I sense that it's kind of a dissonance, and I'm actually grateful to see that we're really starting to look at how are we going to reshape the music industry and the concert industry coming back in once this clears. You know, one of like my callings was really, it isn't just about the performer or the band. It's about what is our legacy and what is the legacy of a musician, and how do we bring offerings to the communities that we're going through so that we can leave an imprint emotionally and let people know. We're so grateful for your commitment to us, to the music that you've heard, and let's feature your artwork at the front of our shows, and so like rethinking so that it isn't just people up on a pedestal, it's a community of people, and you nourish us by listening to, or your fans nourish you by listening to your music, and then nourish them as well. Like, how can you do what you do so well and give back to each of the communities that you visit? Can you tell me about songs that you listened to as a kid that really touched you?
Once I kind of started off early 70s. Again, people really never had much money in the 70s. My mum and dad looked after us great. I had 2 brothers and a sister. We never ever went without food. Always had plenty of food. They weren't rich. We always had holidays. But when you started, it was you'd listen to the radio at the time. Then you managed to get a cassette, and then you would record the top 10 hits that would be on the radio, what's the top of the charts. And that's when, go back in the day in the 70s, where you had a band like Slade, Sweet, which I absolutely loved. I loved the glam rock. Absolutely massive fan of Sweet. And they would maybe sell 70,000 singles. So if they brought a single out, they would sell 70,000 singles in a day. And then it would go to number 1. And then at the end of 2 months, 3 months, they've maybe sold 300,000 records. Now you sell 5,000 records, you're number 1 in the charts. So to me, it's not right. And it's not, you're not physically going out and buying a record, you're downloading it from the internet. The biggest rip-off to me, Spotify, all the platforms that, now I'm not saying it's bad, you kind of get free advertisement for your albums. All our albums are on Spotify. If I had my way, I wouldn't have them on it. I really wouldn't. But I don't think we've made a cent. Although we've had probably hundreds of thousands of people listening to it, downloading it, we've never made a penny. And to me, that's an absolute shame, especially for, even if you're a massive band, like say if you had somebody like Beyonce, who's maybe had 10 million, that she'll get money from, but not from the downloads. They will pay her because they know that people will listen to her records. They'll get money, but basic bands, you can get 100,000 people listening to you, and you'll get 3 cents or something. It's ridiculous. So I put my hand out. I take my hand in my heart, and I really love the people that take time and money to buy our albums and obviously other albums, I still buy albums. I never download music. I don't download music. I prefer to buy the CDs. I like the package, like obviously the one that you sent to me. To have a physical thing in your hand and put it into your CD player or on your LP records is really, really good, rather than sitting downloading it, having it on your phone. I'm not saying I haven't done it. I have done it with some stuff that I couldn't get on CD, or sometimes you get a really good deal on Apple Music. I get one for Queensryche, and I got 10 albums for $10.99. And I love Queensryche, so I managed to get that. If you go for it now, it's $44.99, so it's expensive. But I prefer people to buy stuff. I buy stuff. But in saying that, we still make a lot of money off CD Baby, Amazon Music, because there is people who don't want to have a physical copy. They don't have a CD player. They don't have a record player. So they'll download your album. So it doesn't cost you 1 penny. So that way the profit's basically yours. I don't know how much Amazon, how much CD Baby take per download. I know most albums are $7.99, I think it is, and it's like 99 cents or 99 pence for one track. I think that's the way it works. So we had to do a bit of manoeuvring with the Spirit album because it was a 44-minute track. We obviously couldn't let people download that for 99 cents. So we had to split it into sections. So if you buy the whole album, it's £7.99. But if you buy individual tracks, it's 99 cents. So that works out. There's 10 tracks. So it's cheaper to buy the album than download. I don't have a problem with people, but I'd prefer if they bought the thing. But I said it doesn't cost 1 cent for people to download. And I'm happy because you're still making money. And if people are happy to do it, I'm not. I like, I said, the physical. I like to have a CD or a vinyl record in my hand. And I like to be able to read the lyrics, look at the pictures, read about the band, who played what instrument, did you have any guests? I'll sit and read through all the stuff, and then I'll go, oh, that's really good. I didn't know he was on it. And a lot of bands now seem to have, when before they do an album, they'll basically put a pre-order, they'll put a thing, can you pay money first? Because a lot of bands can't afford to go in and record an album because it's expensive. So if they have enough people to go into these sites and they'll pay for the album 6 months before it's going to be released, that gives them the money. I'm happy with that as well. I think that's a great. That was Marillion. That was actually Marillion were the first band to do that.
Oh.
Marillion were the first band ever to ask the fans to pay for their next recording, and everybody. So they were the first band to ever do it, and then everybody jumped on the bandwagon. But it's a great idea. We're fortunate we've got enough money in our accounts that we can do the recording, but we don't have money we can retire on. We've never made any money out of it. It just goes to record the next album, pay for the CDs, and again, that's like most bands do. They can't really afford to go into a studio and spend $70,000-$80,000 to record an album and then have to pay for the CDs, the promotion. So it's kind of word of mouth. And when you get yourself reasonably well known, the albums kind of sell themselves. So we do it that way. But I said, we're never going to retire on it. We certainly don't make money that we can sit and think, let's go on a holiday to Bahamas. It's not like that. But I think that's the bands like ours, that's kind of what it's like.
Right. You do it strictly out of passion, you know.
We do it, the passion of playing the music, playing to a live audience, and I always said, and it's a really, really strange thing, I always said the greatest thing in the world to me at the time, and this was before I joined the fire service, the greatest feeling in the world is standing on a stage, singing a song, and you can see the audience singing along to the words, because they obviously know the song. And that, to me, is absolute magic. When I joined the fire service, my perspective changed slightly. The greatest thing in the world was to go in, you're in a fire, and you manage to go in and save someone. That then changed. The band was still up there, but nothing beats getting in and saving somebody in a fire or in a car crash, a rail crash, a plane crash. That's still the best thing ever. But music's quite high, but not that high.
Right. And often, I wonder how often you have helped to your singing, and then of course the lyrics written and the song itself. I wonder how often it's reached people so that they have choices beyond harming themselves or harming other people. How often music that you are in service, not only the fire service, but also in the service of serving humans.
Yeah. I think, yes, that there is people write lyrics. There's people write a lot of dark lyrics, and I said on the Spirit album, a lot of the lyrics are quite dark, but they're meant to be because it's about life at the start of life, middle of life, dying, and then hopefully you're going to maybe come back. We wrote a song back probably about 1986, 87. The track was called The Rebel, and at the time they had still the troubles in Northern Ireland where they had the Catholics and the Protestants, the IRA, the UDA. So they were blowing people up, innocent people. So we wrote a song basically, and it was called The Rebel. It was basically about one of these people who goes about with a mask on, covers his face, a paramilitary. And it was about what he does. He's sitting in the pub, sitting in the snug of an old go pub in a safe house. So he's sitting in a safe house. And that's basically what that song was about. And people used to relate to that. And in the original song, there was a little section of it. Northern Ireland and Scotland, there's really bitter like Catholics and Protestants. It's really, really bad. It's obviously died down now. It's actually a lot better. But back then, when the IRA were blowing people up in Ireland and in the United Kingdom. So we wrote this song, and there was a little middle section in it. Jim played a keyboard part, and part of the keyboard part was a song called The Sash, which was a Protestant song for the Orange Walk, and then the next part was part of the Catholic song, and he mixed the two of them. So it just lasted for about 30 seconds. When we updated it for the Fanfare and Fantasy album, we changed it from The Rebel to The Cause. So we changed it. It was still basically the same, but we changed it because the world had changed, because of the things that happened in Afghanistan, where people were then blown up, innocent people. A certain faction would think that their religion was better than your religion, and so we changed it to The Cause, basically saying that these people think that their cause is better than yours, and if you don't do what they say and what they think, they're going to kill you. So it was basically based on, originally it was Ireland, but we updated it and we added two other sections into the song, two more lyrical passages, basically to change it. And it changed the whole song, but what it meant was it was the same idea, but it was now worldwide. It meant that if you're in Afghanistan and you're part of a certain group, say like ISIS, it doesn't matter. You think that your cause is correct and everybody else is wrong, and that's basically what it was about. So a lot of people kind of related to that.
Right, and even today, I would imagine, because so many people are becoming ostracized and kind of split. Versus you have the ability and you have the foresight in order to become questioning of the split. and asking people to consider instead of splitting off and splintering, which pits everybody against each other.
Yeah, it's became I would say, in the past 12, 18 months, without the virus, the world to me has just went mad. It's just like you can't say anything now. If you say something, somebody's going to be offended, and a lot of people seem to get offended for no reason. Even if it doesn't offend them, they seem to get offended because somebody else has been offended, so they'll jump on the band. So if you put something on Twitter or Facebook and somebody then hammers you down, you sit and think, right, okay, so you start, and I see people all the time where they've got major arguments, they're falling out, and they start swearing at you, and I'm going, geez, so I never put anything on my Facebook that's to do with politics, to do with religion, to do with like soccer and the UK football, like Scottish. I don't, because I know for a fact people will fall out with you. Because they'll think it's ridiculous.
It's the same storyline no matter where you are in the time, the 1400s, the 1200s.
You go back right through history and you'll find out right through history, especially in Europe, when they fought from the Middle Ages, they called it, in Europe, where the Muslims and the Christians were fighting. And that's still happening. It still goes on 600 years later. And then you look at some of the things. I mean, I look at some of the things that people, my friends in America, now a lot of these people, I've obviously not met some of, they'll message me, but if they put something on, I mean, ridiculous things. I've got one that I actually blocked yesterday, who the stuff was so bitter, that I went, geez, I went on and blocked this guy, and I went, geez, oh, you can't say that. It was so confrontational. And I know in America, when you've got your President Trump now, he comes away, he just seems to say what he likes and he doesn't care. He's not interested, but he doesn't care what anybody thinks of what he says. He's a nutcase, but he makes points and everybody's got an opinion. You can't shoot something. If somebody says something, you can disagree with them. But when you start attacking them and going, right, okay, you don't have to agree with the person. Go to the ballot box. Don't vote for that person. If you don't like what he says, don't vote for him. If you like what he says, vote for him. Yeah. But don't go on. And Facebook's just mental because the amount of people they just attack. If anybody's a fan of President Trump, they'll put posts up saying, "Oh, he's done this." If the guy, is it Biden? Is it the guy's name Biden? Biden, Biden. Yeah. They'll say they like him. Now that's just like in the UK. You either go with one political party or another. The Democrats, the Republicans. I really couldn't tell you who Trump, whether he's I think he's a Republican. Is he a Republican? Right, he's a Republican.
I don't know that the Republicans would call him a Republican, but he's his own person, I think.
He's just like his own. He should actually be. I'm trying to think that there's a great film, and this is where I picture Donald Trump. The film was with Richard Pryor and Gene Wilder, and oh no, it wasn't. It was Richard Pryor, and it was the one where he won millions of pounds.
Millions.
What was it called?
Brewster's Millions.
Millions, yeah. And he becomes a politician. Don't vote for me, and that's what and then he was going, I'll be a politician, spend all my money, and that's exactly what American politics is like. Vote none of us, or sort of, I can't remember the quote, but it was so clever, and I said it was so simple, but that's what would happen. And then in the US, I mean, the voting system to me, I don't know how they do it, because they sit and keep saying if he wins the vote in Florida, he'll get president again. And I don't know, I watch a lot of American programs. I like a lot of American programs, like NCIS. I like things like that, but I don't understand. You can take this thing, the Fifth Amendment, that you don't have to, because if you say something, you'll implicate yourself. They'll send you to jail. So that's like basically getting a get out of jail card, because I don't have to send. I'm going to plead the Fifth Amendment. So you ask somebody a question, where you at this bar where the shooting happened? I plead the Fifth Amendment. So rather than say, no, I wasn't there, or yes, I was, because if you say no, you weren't there, and they find out you're telling a lie, you're going to jail. But if you say yes, you were there, they're going to say, well, what did you see? So the plead the fifth is a get out. It's kind of like there's a thing in Scotland which is unique. Scotland has, when you go to court, you've got guilty, not guilty, and they've got this other one. It's just called not proven, right? Which is really weird. It's not anywhere. It's not in, I don't think it's in any other country in the world. Not proven means that you're guilty, but they just couldn't prove it. But it means you don't go to jail. So there's lawyers who work on the angle to, when they're looking at the jury, they look to hope that the jury will have enough doubt that they think maybe he's not guilty,
Right.
but maybe he is guilty. So they'll say not proven. So the guy gets off, but everybody knows he's guilty. It's a really they're trying to get rid of it. But America, you're either guilty or not guilty.
Right. Or you were guilty, but they couldn't prove it. So
like O.J. Simpson.
Yeah.
Guilty. What did you do? I mean, that was
yeah. And who's
everybody knew he was guilty.
Intriguing. I was a young person then, and I remember being like, wow, that's really intriguing. And I wonder how many people, really just step away from that they, because of the money that they're able to just pay their way through.
Yeah.
One piece that I find intriguing about today's society is that when I was a kid, like, people were known as being jerks, like that guy's just a jerk. Yeah. And now it seems like everybody, that it's not okay to be a jerk, and one piece that I really love is this idea of 33.3% of the people will love you no matter what you do. It won't matter. It won't matter how messy you are. Yeah. And that 33% will hate you no matter what you do. And then the other 33% kind of waver in between. And so, like, this idea of just find your 33% and those people. And then if you're not into, I'm the same way. I'm like, if you're not into it, just say, I'm not into that. Thanks. And more choice, So I appreciate that you're really kind of looking at, instead of contributing to the mess, just being like, wow, I'm really not okay with that. And I'm not interested in that today. Turn the page,
That's what I do. As I said, I'll sometimes get through my list of people on Facebook, and I'll go, there's 100 people that I've never liked anything, never interacted. I don't know whether that's down to Facebook or whether it's just, I don't know. But I'll go in and just delete. And not because, it's because they don't interact. They don't say, oh, I know what that person's, oh, I saw your post, or they sit and like it. So you go through, and I do a wee purge. Most people do it. I get a ridiculous amount of people. Most of the people on it, I said, I've never met. Lots of them are, I'd say the majority of people that are my friends on Facebook are musicians. So I can associate with that. So I'm happy with that. Even if I don't know them personally, or I don't interact with them. A lot of them are very well-known people, and I do interact with them. So, but as I said, at the end of the day, you look at some posts that people put up and you go, geez, you're just putting a big spotlight on yourself. You've just made yourself look ridiculous. You can rant and rave about Joe Biden, whatever, and or thing with Trump, and you can sit and make your decision, but don't fall out with your friends and your family. Just because you chose to vote for this person or vote for that person doesn't make you a bad person. Just because they don't like them. And I think it's just, it happens in the UK, it probably happens everywhere. You can't vote for them because they're fascist. Well, how do you know they're fascist? Oh, you can't vote for them because they don't like the minorities. In America, when Obama was president, things really seemed to calm down when President Obama was there. Bill Clinton, everybody loved Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton was a serial womanizer. Denied it. Everybody knew he did it. His wife knew he did it, but he still denied it. So he's an out-and-out liar. So I love when the American presidents come up, and you look back to Nixon. Nixon get caught out for telling lies when the Thingamagate came up.
Right, Watergate.
Yeah, Watergate came up, and he get caught basically telling lies, but he was man enough. He admitted it, had to then get out. Whereas Bill Clinton denied with Monica Lewinsky, that woman, I never had sex with that, blah, and you're going, yes, he did. But he got caught in court, basically. He got his 2 terms. And then you had the Bush administrations, the original, the dad, and then George Bush. And George Bush was buying stuff off of the Bin Ladens. They were part of. You sit and think, hold on a minute, these people were what to do with the 9/11, and so you sit and think to yourself, this is the president of the United States of America, but he was buying arms or giving arms to, and you go, it's all to do with money and power. And right. The likes of us, we're little small pegs in wee very small holes, and they control us. And I think, I might be wrong, but this is my thing. In this past 5 months, I think the government's, maybe not so much in America, because I said Donald Trump just does what he likes. He couldn't care less. But in the UK, they're controlling people because they're telling you, this is what you must do. You must wear a mask when you go to a shop. You must wear a mask when you get into a supermarket. But they just opened the pubs in the UK. Scotland, we're kind of 2 weeks behind England. So Scotland, the pubs opened, I think 2, maybe 3 weeks ago. So you can walk into a pub, so you don't have to have a mask. So you can sit there for 5 or 6 hours, not have a mask on. But if you walk into a shop and want to pick up a pint of milk, you've got to put a mask on. My logic is, when you walk into a supermarket, the coronavirus, is it sitting behind a tin of beans waiting to jump out and get you? Because he's no sitting in the pub waiting to get you. He's obviously just in the. So you have to put a mask on to go in and get a pint of milk, but you don't have to sit for 5 hours. It's ridiculous.
Scottish alcohol is so potent that it
the First Minister put the price of alcohol up in Scotland a couple of years ago. And I think everybody thinks that they're all raging alcoholics in Scotland. And it's not. It's a kind of myth. It used to be, going back to the old days when everybody drank whiskey and nobody could afford to drink. They just made this thing up, and they think that everybody in Scotland's a drunk. And it's a characterisation. The Americans think that Brigadoon is a real place that comes alive every 100 years. I think Gene Kelly was in the film Brigadoon. It was brilliant, really, really funny, but it's a Scottish place that only comes alive for 1 day. And then the Americans think that haggis is real. It's wee animals running about the hills. So...
Yes, I have Irish descent, and so every St. Patty's Day I get to see the display of what people actually think Ireland is all about, and I'm like, okay, well, that's one narrative.
They think there's leprechauns running about Ireland, and there's pots of gold that ends a rainbow. But
that's true. It's
kind of funny that where I first went to the USA, 1979. And my mum's sister moved to just outside Detroit, Michigan. So I went over in 1979, visited them. And when I was speaking we went to a bar So we ordered drinks. We spoke very slowly that the barmaids could understand. So then me and my brother and his friend, we would talk to each other. So the girls were listening to us, and they asked us what language we were speaking. And we spoke English. And they went, "You can't be speaking English. We can't understand you." It's just because, like in Scotland, we speak really, really fast, really fast. But my cousins in America, they could understand us, and they'd never met me before, and it was only because their mum and their dad were from Scotland. And even although I recognise it's an American accent from my Aunt Ina and my Uncle Charlie, they sounded American to me. But even though they're American, their children could understand us no problem because their mum and dad spoke it, and then I had an uncle in Canada. So I mean, I love US. I've been in the US probably about 12, 13, 14 times. I love America. To me, it's the greatest place on earth, and I'm not saying that because I'm online. Anywhere I've went in America, the people are so friendly, really, really friendly. Always nice when you go to restaurants. They treat you nice. Have a nice day. And people think that's an Americanism, but a lot of people, it's just a general. It's a nice thing to say to somebody. Have a nice day, rather than in Scotland, people will look at you and take the money off you and just walk away. They won't. They won't. It's a totally different culture.
It is.
But
Yeah.
Scotland's a great country as well, but totally different from the US. I mean, I went to Vegas. I mean, I absolutely love Las Vegas. Loved Las Vegas. I thought it's the greatest city in the world. But just fun. But my son was still quite young. I was in California. I hate Los Angeles. I hated. I thought Los Angeles was really, really. It didn't live up to its expectations. I just thought it was a really dirty, quite sleazy city. The wee section where they hold the Oscars, it's a nice wee section. Go down to where all the big designer places, Rodeo Drive, really nice. But the main part of Los Angeles where kind of hold the Oscars, there's a wee section 300-400 meters. Once you go outside that, if you stopped outside a shop, people were coming up, standing beside you, wanting to know. And I went, I didn't like it at all. I just thought it was really creepy. But most of my uncle took me in Detroit. He drove me through Detroit. This was 1979. And I remember him saying to me, you don't stop at traffic lights in Detroit. He says, you go up and you look both ways and you just drive through. He said, because somebody will come up and steal your tyres. Because Detroit at the time, I think, was the worst city. I think it was the worst city in America for shootings. But I thought it was a beautiful city. These two big mirrored glass buildings, which, because you had nothing like that in the UK. We never had shopping centres in the UK, like shopping malls, you call them in America.
Right.
And I saw these buildings, and they used to use them in a lot of films. I remember you used them as a thing. Remember the TV program Buck Rogers in the 25th century?
Yes.
So they big mirrored, and I went, I've been there because I recognised it. So my aunt Ina took us to a shopping mall. And we got off the car, and then a wee trolley bus took us down to the shop centre. So we walked into this, looking at it, going, there's about 70 or 80 shops in it. Now, in the UK, there was no such things as shop centres. This is 1979.
Right.
They had a cinema in it, an ice rink, an English bar. We're going, so I'm looking at my brother and my pal, and I'm going, we just walked into heaven because there's all these shops. And then it was literally the 80s before they started building shopping centres in the UK. But probably still not near the size of the ones in the US.
Right. I remember when I first moved to, or before I was married, the only series that I watched was, well, the only series that I was privy to was EastEnders.
Oh, geez, yeah.
I remember like every day they talked about cooking, and then they would go down to the corner and they would get, they would get their supplies to make dinner.
Yeah.
And so when I first talked to my husband, and he was saying, he was over in England, so he was saying, I'm going to go get some stuff for food tonight. And I said, what do you do with your food afterwards? And he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, where do you store your leftovers? What are you talking about? I'm like, well, do you have he's like, we have a refrigerator. And I was like, oh, because you never see them store anything.
Yeah, never.
And then he's like, I'm like, so do you walk down to the corner to get your food, or where do you get it? And he's like, no, honey, we have, but it's awesome. We have supermarkets. It was awesome because he always thought that his society was so much better than America. And so to be asking for somebody to be asking him those questions was just a funny moment for me.
Right. The UK, where basically we're like 30 years behind the US. And that's what I'm saying. It's although we have shopping malls now with maybe 100 shops in them, the US had them in 1979 and probably before that. But I said it took us so long to catch up with the US. And the thing is now that a lot of designer shops that you would never see, and you go into Glasgow. Glasgow's the second, not biggest, but if you go in the UK, Glasgow's probably rated just after London for people wanting to visit. If you go to Edinburgh's only got the castle. It's got the castle and the main street. It's got a lot of pubs, restaurants, but Glasgow's got everything. Glasgow's an absolutely fantastic city. When I grew up, it was really, really bad, really down. Tenement buildings, people. The backyards were really, really. They were so poor. People didn't have money, and eventually they took away all the places. So even some of the places in Glasgow that are now really nice places. And Glasgow's a great city. Beautiful restaurants, great pubs, great nightlife if you're young. And it is second. The rate is second after London to visit. Come to Glasgow. Glasgow's brilliant. Really nice city.
I love Scotland. It's possibly next to Italy. It's my favorite place that I've been and visited. Just to close this out for the night, I'm really grateful that you were able to join me here tonight for Lighthouse Effects, and I'm excited to have you back. Maybe we can bring in some more of the band and have some more conversations, or any of the projects that you're part of. My last piece is, what do you do to help yourself calm down and really just to recenter with all of the chaos that's kind of around? What are the things? I heard congratulations on the new grandbaby, on your new.
Thank you.
So what are some of your key components? You talked about prayer. What are some of your other key components for you to relax? Like, I know that you go a lot. So what do you do to take care of yourself?
I'm not a worrier. I'm an optimist rather than a pessimist. A lot of people don't agree with me. I think the coronavirus has been blown more out of proportion than it actually is. I sit and look at it and think the flu kills more people every year than this virus has. They've jumped on it, but I think governments have made a big issue of it. They've scared people. They're sitting saying there's going to be a second wave. So they've come up with an idea that something bad's going to happen come the winter. So you better be terrified. So the government are ready to step in. So they've put that in people's heads. So I really don't worry about anything. The only thing I worry about is my family, my son, 2 grandchildren, his partner, and my friends. I've got my friends. That's who I worry about. Anything else, I don't care. In my work, I don't care if anybody likes me or nobody likes me. At the end of the day, it's just a case of most people like me. 99% people in the fire service like me. You'll always get the one, as you said earlier. You said 33%, 33%.
Right.
I know that majority of people like me. In my work just now, I would say probably again 99% people like me. I don't try and down people. I don't make fun of people. I have a laugh and a joke, but I don't go down the road of making somebody belittle somebody. You can have, I said, a bit of fun with people, but I don't bring people down to make them feel as if they're lower than you, smaller. So I feel I'm an easygoing person, and I don't really worry about anything. I said the coronavirus. I've worked in the airport now right through 19 weeks. There's been no cases. Sorry, I'm going to take 1 second. I'm going to have to plug this iPad in for 2 seconds because it's literally just about to cut out. So if you can give me what I'll get my plug.
Yep. Yeah, you can go ahead and do that. You can see your albums behind you.
Yeah, well, can you see them? Yeah.
I can see that. That's awesome. So we're going to tune out here in just a moment, folks. But thank you so much for joining us. You've joined us at Lighthouse Effects, AFFECTS. If you put your comments down, we can go back through and get to those comments. Sorry, I didn't drop in with all of that today. I was pretty focused. But we're excited to follow up, and I will tag Joe here in the posts. So if you have any questions for Comedy of Errors for Joe specifically, then please go ahead and drop those in the post. Joe, it's been really a pleasure, and I'm so excited for your vacation that's coming up.
Yeah, I'm going up to Inverness next week. Thank goodness. Hope the weather will be good. I apologise if anybody is listening and they maybe don't understand what I've said. I apologise. It's kind of, once you start talking in Scotland, you start to speed your voice up, and you probably don't realise you're actually doing it. So apologies to MD who can't understand maybe one or two of the words. And I know we kind of went off centre with the music, talking about other things, but I think, again, it's another thing. It's not, you don't always need to talk about your music. It's as if people think, is that all you want to talk about? Let's hear something else, which was good, what you did. So you get to kind of talk about like things that happen in America, etc., politics in America, which I said I really don't understand. It's mental.
At this point, really.
Yeah.
But yes, and I do appreciate, the wider variety of conversations that are available. So I appreciate all that you dropped in with, and I'm excited to have you on again. Yes. So thank you again, and blessings and prayers for you and your family. And I look forward to connecting with you again.
Thanks very much, Adrian. I really appreciate it, and thanks very much for people for listening in. Thank you. Appreciate it.
We'll see you soon. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.